As you know by now, there's been a barbaric attack in Paris targeting the publishers of Charlie Hebdo, a French magazine that published cartoons of the Prophet Mohammed. 3 terrorists who are still on the loose killed 12 people, including 2 police officers, during the deadly attack. And unfortunately, my warning that we would see ISIS-inspired attacks targeting the West around the Christmas New Year period has regrettably come true. And I believe one of the reasons for this is that we've fatally ignored the warnings that have been coming for weeks and months. Of course, the threat of Islamic terrorism was hyped, and in fact overhyped, in the years after 9/11. Yet it's been downplayed by the media over the past couple of years. We'll get into why that is in a moment. But remember, just a few weeks ago, in another area of France, Dijon, there was a guy who drove a car into over a dozen people while maniacally chanting Allah Akbar. And despite the fact that this attack was blatantly motivated by Islamic extremism, he was maniacally shouting Allah Akbar as he ploughed this car into a group of people. The media and the establishment downplayed it as just a lone individual with mental problems. And then again, the culprit behind the Sydney siege demanded an ISIS flag, said that his attack was inspired by ISIS. ISIS then later praised him for carrying out the hostage-taking attack. And again, the media reported it as a lone individual with mental issues, desperate to bury a connection to Islamic extremism. And likewise with the attack on the Canadian Parliament back in October, the connection to Islamic extremism was buried by the mainstream media. And part of the reason for this was obviously the fact that for the past 4 years, governments in the West, including the United Kingdom, the United States, and France, have openly armed and supported terrorists linked to Al-Qaeda in both Libya, Syria, and other areas. These individuals who carried out the attack on the publishers of a magazine in Paris were reportedly armed with a grenade launcher and other weapons that have been provided to these terror groups by the West, both in Libya and Syria. So part of the explanation, part of the blame for this has to be laid firmly at the feet of our own governments for supporting jihadists in the effort to overthrow Gaddafi and the attempt to destabilize the Assad regime in Syria. This has directly led to radicalization. It's led to individuals both in the United Kingdom, France, and other European countries traveling over to Syria, joining Jabhat al-Nusra, joining ISIS, becoming radicalized, and then coming back home to places like the UK and France and carrying out these attacks. Our own governments are partially to blame for promoting, encouraging this radicalization process that leaves us vulnerable to more shocking attacks like we've seen today in Paris. We can also partially lay the blame at the feet of the media and the establishment for creating this politically correct, obsessed environment under which any criticism of Islamic extremism is treated as Islamophobia. Look at this example. The Telegraph, in light of today's attack, has published the front page of the magazine Charlie Hebdo with the cartoon on the cover blurred out. So they're still kowtowing to political correctness even after 12 people have been slaughtered in cold blood and God knows how many more to come. The likes of The Guardian and the BBC are still brushing over the identities of the killers in an effort to obfuscate the connection with Islamic extremism. Even France's own interior minister referred to these bloodthirsty terrorists as, quote, criminals. So they're still afraid to call them what they are. So whereas the PC-obsessed media continues to show no backbone whatsoever, even in the face of massacres now being carried out by these people, the likes of Anjem Choudary and other Islamic hate preachers are only becoming more bold, still insisting that Allah trumps freedom of speech and justifying this barbaric attack. Here's another example from an extremist fuck your freedom of expression if you're using that freedom to hurt someone's feelings. So they actually think that the worst offence, even after at least 12 people have been slaughtered, is still the fact that this magazine published some cartoons of Muhammad. Absolutely crazy. And yet these kind of people are being given cover by the media in their complete failure to stand up for freedom of speech over and above religious extremism. This is what the proper response should be from Charlie Skelton. The lunatics who did the Charlie Hebdo killings have just made it much more important to make jokes about Muslim extremism and Muhammad. Every single person on the planet with Twitter accounts, with Facebook accounts, should now be sending out the exact same cartoon images that were published by this magazine to stand behind them, to stand for free speech, to stand against politically correct madness, which has created this environment in which people were afraid to even draw cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad, to even criticize extremist Islam. That should now be flushed down the toilet for good. Free speech is paramount above all, and this should be the proper reaction to today's events in Paris. The proper reaction from every publication on the planet should not be to kowtow to these jihadists even more, like the Telegraph did today by blurring out the front page image of Charlie Hebdo magazine. It should be for every publication to publish these very same images en masse to show these bastards that we're not going to back down from the basic principle of free speech that has been eviscerated precisely as a result of this politically correct Islamophobia obsessed environment that's being created by the establishment, by the media, and as a result of our own governments creating a fertile ground for these terrorists as a result of destabilizing Syria and as a result of arming them directly both in Syria and Libya. And that's got to be the takeaway from today's tragic events in Paris. Let me know what you think in the comments below. This is Paul Joseph Watson reporting for Infowars.com.